Welcome back to another episode here on the ChurchMag server. Today we are going to be putting the walls onto our cathedral here, at least on the sides. We might start on the roof as well, but at least getting these walls up and these two towers up is our plan for today. I'm going to kind of take this whole project a little slow, so it'll probably be split over a few different episodes. But I plan on finishing at least the exterior this episode or the next episode. And then we'll start working on the interior, which I'm pretty excited for. And so we start building the exterior of this build. This is by far one of the largest projects I've ever worked on in Minecraft, specifically in survival mode. I've made some pretty big builds in creative mode before, but this is by far the biggest build that I've ever had to gather the resources for and make it completely on my own in survival mode. Now, I did do some parts of this project. I practiced in creative mode, like the domes and some of the towers, kind of this idea of the architecture that I wanted. But for the most part, a lot of this is the first time that I built it. At least the first time I built it in survival mode, placing the blocks. There were some aspects of it, like I said, the domes and stuff like that, where I didn't have a lot of experience building those things, and so I wanted to make sure that I was going to build them right and not have to destroy it all and rebuild it. But I built that, and I built the towers, but I never really had built them all together. And the main reason I do that is because for me, Minecraft is about having fun, and if I'm building stuff in creative and then building it in survival, I kind of get bored the second time I'm building it. And usually what ends up happening is I end up messing up and then I get frustrated. And so I've just found for me, that's not a build style that works. And I think for the most part, whenever you're playing Minecraft, the most important thing you can do is find a build or play style that matches you and that you actually enjoy playing. After all, Minecraft is a game. It's something that we do for fun. And so it shouldn't be something that we're getting stressed out about or anything like that. And so you see, throughout this build, there's times in which I make building decisions that might not have been the best. Or that I have to come back later and fix and redo because they're not quite right. But for the most part, I am building this as I go. I've done a few parts of it here and there before, but as you can see, I kind of decide I'm going to finish up the front first, kind of pull a Grian kind of thing where at least if the front is done, then when people see it, it'll look done, even if the back isn't. But I kind of decided that no, I actually kind of wanted to build the whole entire thing, which as you can see, I finished building this front wall, and I start to notice that there might be a problem in the future. You see, that wall is coming up really high on that tower, and it's barely covering up the door. And so I'm thinking, you know what, maybe I can fix this, but I'm really just going to come back to it later. And I'm just going to start doing the back wall as well. Now, this back wall is much, much easier than the front wall. It's literally just building a wall straight up. It's pretty great. There's no towers in the back. It's pretty simple. Eventually, I'll come back through and do a little bit more detailing because obviously we're going to have windows and things like that. But for the most part, in building this, it's really just placing blocks, which is super nice to be doing. There's no real thought going into this. The domes require a lot more thought. The towers required a lot of thought, but this part I was just placing blocks, which was pretty nice. I'm pretty sure I was watching some Minecraft YouTube videos. My friend got me into Joel's episodes of Hermitcraft recently, and so I've been watching all of his stuff along with Wells Knight and a few other people on the Hermitcraft server. I've really started to enjoy watching their videos more because they challenge me. And also, I can watch them and learn things about Minecraft, about game mechanics, and about different build styles than my own and how I could improve my build style. And so as you see, I kind of am starting to really realize that the front wall is just not tall enough. It's going to have to be bigger, which means in turn that something's going to have to change about the towers. And so at first I'm like, you know what? I don't want to tear down the towers. So I'll try something different. I'll try maybe having the back wall be taller and it kind of gets shorter. But then as I'm building, I'm like, I'm not going to like the way this looks if I choose to do it this way. And so I'm kind of like, instead I'm going to just go ahead, bite the bullet. Maybe I'll try closing in one side of the towers. Maybe that'll work. Maybe that'll look nice. And so I finished building all of these walls, and I decided, okay, this is the height that I want the walls to be at. Now, how do I make it work with the towers? And so I'm not quite sure exactly what to do at first. So I'm like, okay, I'll just kind of fill in the back and the sides of the tower. And that worked. It was okay. I just didn't really like the way it looked. It kind of made the towers feel insignificant, not important, really short compared to the building overall. And so I kind of ran into this occurrence of kind of the first time in this build of where I was like, you know what? Something is going to have to change here. Sure, I built this perfectly in a creative world and it looked great, but here in a survival world, it's not quite working. And so I go ahead and build the front wall to see exactly how tall it's going to be. And I quickly realized, like, okay, I have to do something different. And so I start to decide to tear down the towers. Not entirely, but kind of raise them up a few blocks so that the openings can be above the wall. And so you see I can kind of just destroying all of what I had just done. And at the moment I was a little upset with myself that I hadn't got the height of the tower quite right whenever I built that. But now looking back on it, like, you know, there's no real reason to be upset about it. Like, I was just building and having fun, and it literally took me like 10 minutes to fix. So it wasn't really that big of a problem. So as you can see, I started to rebuild these towers, and I really still wanted to keep the roof and everything exactly the same as they were when they were smaller, just make them a little bit taller. And so I decided on the specific roof pattern. I think it kind of looks like wizardy of sorts in a way. I don't know, like kind of just the way it elongates a little bit. And I decided to hide a few sea lanterns in it to light up the tower in a way that would still look somewhat natural, but it would be hidden. So that like it didn't look like obviously there was lights in this tower, but instead that there was just light glowing from the tower. Which took me a little bit to figure out exactly how I wanted to do it, but the sea lanterns worked really well, and I could hide one of them in my personal favorite part of this build, the giant bells that I built on the inside of these towers. I really love the way they look. I think they look really cool and fun. And I had never really done anything quite like them before. And so whenever I got the chance to build this, you see right now, I'm building it right now. It was really interesting because one, I was using a block I didn't have a lot of. I don't have a lot of gold, but I really was like, wow, this looks so simple. There's no way this is going to look good. But then when I got farther away, you can see I'm free camming right now. It looks really nice. And so I decided, you know what, I'm actually just going to go ahead and destroy this other tower too. And then I will rebuild it all again at this taller height. And then once we finish the towers, we start, honestly, the scariest part of this build for me. The ceiling and the giant dome. Now, I don't know if you guys realize this or not, but domes are actually kind of difficult to build in Minecraft. Especially if you've never done it before, which before this build, I'd built like one dome before, the one in our greenhouse. But before that, I had never really built any domes because I never really had a build style that really needed domes. But in this build style, I need domes, so I got to get good at it. And so you can see I've already built 2 domes. I'm building my 3rd now. But for this also, I had to come up with a way that the ceiling could look good. And so what I decided was I was going to go around and put the circumference, I think that's the right thing. Math is hard, but I'm pretty sure it's the circumference of the circle up at the top of the sphere, the bottom of the sphere, I guess. And then put the rest of the ceiling on around it. And so this might not have been the best way to do it, but it's the way that I found that worked for me. Because it let me kind of visualize, okay, what do I want the roof to look like now that I have the main part of the roof established of where it's going. Because obviously, like, the dome, in my opinion, is the most important part of this build. And so it needed to be good. And it needed to look great in order for the rest of the build to look good. And so I decided to just go ahead and clean up the circle on the bottom because I didn't need it anymore. Because now the dome is up where it's supposed to be. And then I decided to actually start working on the ceiling. And so at first I was a little unsure what to do, how to kind of match it in between the space. And I was like, you know what? I can use stairs and slabs to kind of give it this raised look of sorts for where this dome starts. And so in my mind at first, I was thinking something like not the Washington Monument, but like the Lincoln Monument, where it's a raised dome, or the dome of the Capitol building in the United States. But I kind of decided against that a little bit because it was a little bit too big at that point and didn't really keep the cathedral feel. And so instead what I decided was simply to do kind of like a slightly raised area where the area around it's kind of sloping down a little bit. And so this gives it a really nice, clean look where it's kind of raising your eyes still up towards the heaven, which is kind of the whole entire point of medieval cathedral architecture. Throughout every choice that they made in building cathedrals, their primary focus was drawing your eyes from the ground up towards the heavens. And that's kind of the idea behind this whole entire cathedral in our world as well. This idea of like drawing your eyes from the baseline, from the base level up to the 2 domes on the sides, up the towers to the giant dome on the top. And in order to do that, you have to do a bunch of small little details that are going to gradually draw an individual's focus up to the very top. And so now that I've finished the ceiling part, or I've almost finished the ceiling part, it was time to start on the dome. Or at least it would be if I wasn't kind of still scared of doing the dome at this point. And so instead, I decided to work on some windows because those are easy and I've done them a lot. And so you can see right here, I start by kind of figuring out where I want the back doors to be. The back doors aren't going to be as big as the front door because they're not really meant to be walking in and out of all the time. And so then I just start breaking blocks, kind of deciding, okay, how tall do I want this to be? What is the general idea of this vibe? And it took me a little while to decide exactly what I wanted. But I soon decided that I kind of wanted to have 2 smaller windows on the sides and 1 taller and bigger window in the middle. Still kind of this idea that it's going to draw your vision up towards the heavens in a way. And you can see I'm starting to try to figure out how to use scaffolding because heaven knows it's one of the hardest things in this game is figuring out how to place scaffolding correctly. But you can see I started kind of shaping up what these windows are going to look like. And I didn't just want the windows to be just kind of plain sitting there. And so I decided that they needed something a little bit more than that. And so I kind of went out another block on the big one. And then I decided that maybe I should start building a frame because most windows, especially those that have stained glass in them, have this kind of framing thing around them. And so I want to make sure, one, that they all had the same shape. You can see I'm going in and editing the 2 side ones to make them tall enough and make them fit kind of in the same kind of vibe as the big one, but then I kind of decide that I need to build a frame around it, and kind of the base of a frame is having a good foundation piece for it. And so you can see I added these goodness gracious, some sandstone stair blocks and some sandstone blocks to kind of give this idea of a frame at the bottom. But then that still wasn't really enough. If you look at stained glass, the frame kind of goes all the way to the top. And so I had to take a minute of deciding how exactly I was going to do that. I had to go craft some sandstone walls because I hadn't really used any or that many in the build. I didn't have a lot. And so I decided to actually start framing out the entirety of these windows. And it took me a little while to figure out exactly how I wanted to do that because I had decided I wanted an odd number, which made it a little bit more difficult in this circumstance. Usually odd numbers make everything easier, but somehow it made it harder in this circumstance. But eventually I landed on this kind of framed look that they are starting to get right now. And I really like the way these look. I think they'll look great once we put stained glass in them. I still have to kind of figure out what exactly I want that stained glass to look like. But I think once we put that stone glass, that's not a thing. Once we put that stained glass in, these frames are going to look super nice as kind of being the way that the glass is being held in. And they're on both sides. I didn't show both sides because it's literally me just rebuilding the same thing over and over again. But the frames are on both sides of the windows. So when you're looking on the outside, you see the frames. When you're sitting on the inside, you still see these frames. And I think one, it kind of breaks up this giant wall that exists here. But two, it also kind of opens a little bit more detailing into the area and makes sense lore-wise and world-wise by how stained glass works. It makes it work also in this world as well. But now, with nothing else to really distract me or take me away from it, I had to start building the dome. I was actually talking to one of my friends here on the server during this process, and I was like, is there anything else I can do currently besides working on this dome? Because I got to place a lot of glass. And so you can see I'm going around. I'm using white stained glass right now. Eventually I plan to kind of plan out a stained glass thing for the top as well in this dome. But I couldn't really decide exactly what I wanted it to look like yet. And so right now we're just going to have a white stained glass ceiling because at least now I have the actual dome figured out. And then later I can come in and break some blocks and redo some things and replace it with a different colored stained glass to kind of give it more of the vibe I'm thinking for the build. I think it'll look really nice. It looks really nice with the white stained glass, but I think it'll also look really nice whenever we actually go in and put a design. Right now, I'm not really sure what I want to do exactly. I thought about putting like a giant sun up there. I tried building it out of wool. It didn't work. I was thinking like the sun from Rapunzel, or for Tangled, I guess. I thought that would look really, really cool, but I couldn't quite Minecraft it into working for this build quite right. It's still a working project. But I've also thought of a few other things so that the stained glass windows that we just built just right before we started this dome could have some symbols in them as well. And so I'm trying to figure out exactly what that'll look like in the future. But once again, like, I don't want these projects to be kind of like one and done, like we're finished with it now because we did it once and we built it once. So it's like, it's kind of okay that like I don't have it all figured out right now, and I'll come back to it later and kind of finish with that detail. Now, sadly, whenever I was building this, I got distracted. I don't really remember what happened, but somehow while I was building it, I paused the recording software that I was using. And so you can see in just a little bit, it's going to kind of cut off where it looks like I don't finish the dome. But I do, I promise. I placed all of the blocks. But for the most part, I will say the dome was definitely, I was right, the hardest part of this build. It was a lot of blocks. I had to follow the program exactly right so that I wouldn't mess up. And like I had built it before, but there were still parts and times in which I was sitting there like, where am I in this picture? Where am I supposed to be placing blocks? But for the most part, like I really like the way it turned out, and I think it looks really good. And so I think there might be a flash of it being completed right here as well. There we go. You can see my recording software kind of quit working there for a minute. And just like that, we have finished the structural part of the outside of our base. So we have the two towers, we have our back two walls, and of course our beautiful glass dome. I'm really happy with how these towers turned out. I'm going to add some decoration to them, but the bells on the top, if I go into free cam mode, you can see it. I really like the way this looks, especially from far off, because they look lit up because I had some sea lanterns in them, but also because they kind of add a little bit of detail to it that draw your eyes upward. As I was doing research on cathedrals and how they were built in the Middle Ages and stuff like that, I learned that in reality, like all cathedrals are built to kind of draw your eyes up towards the heavens. And so that's kind of the idea behind this cathedral, that your eyes would just be gradually drawn up from the decor at the bottom all the way to the bell towers, the stained glass dome, up towards the heavens. And so then all we have left is doing our stained glass up there. So it's not going to be plain white or plain, I think that's white stained glass, like it is right now. I'm going to put like a stained glass design in it of some sorts. I haven't decided exactly what it'll look like. But there'll be some stained glass up there. I just want to go ahead and put the dome up there and then go through with the stained glass later, as kind of like a way to make sure I kept the dome correct. And then we have these 3 windows right here. I haven't decided what I want to do for their stained glass yet. I think it's really important because it's going to be kind of lighting up this whole entire room. So whatever color stained glass I do will impact the color in this room, because there's not a lot of color other than this teal color and the green grass. And that's about it. Everything else is white or brownish with the sandstone. So I want to add a good splash of color here along with on the dome, kind of just to draw your eye and to bring a little bit of life. Like I said earlier, these 2 sections will be split off. This will be our cleric section. And this over here, you can see I've already started gathering some supplies to start working on an interior over here for our library, which is where our librarian villagers will be. And then, of course, this is our waystone. It's how people can teleport here and get here pretty quickly. But I'm actually going to build a giant tree around it, I think. That's where I'm leaning towards right now, is building a big tree that'll kind of fill this space up pretty well. And so yeah, just like that, we have finished our cathedral, at least the exterior of it. I'm actually going to show you guys a full thing of the exterior right now, going all the way around, and let you listen to a little sneak peek of the 2 songs that play at nightfall and sunrise here at the cathedral.